In 2009, 50 concerts were planned in London. What if Michael Jackson had stepped onto that stage? How would music history have changed? The world remembers the headlines, the breaking news, the shock that rolled from Los Angeles across every time zone. People stood still in living rooms and shop windows, eyes fixed on screens, trying to understand how a heartbeat that had set the rhythm of an era could simply stop. But let's press pause on that moment and tilt the camera a few degrees. Imagine a different thread, one the public never saw, where the king of pop didn't vanish into memory, but quietly stepped out of the spotlight and kept walking. Think about the pressure he carried. The lawsuits, the rehearsals, the promises, the weight of a global comeback. In that alternate line, the night the world thought it lost him, Michael makes a decision only he can make. Not a grand speech, not a final curtain call, just a silent choice. The plan is clinical. Reduce the noise, control the narrative, disappear. While the media cycles spin, a private jet lifts off under a different name, and Los Angeles shrinks into a grid of lights behind him. First stop, Tokyo. There's a reason for that. Japan had always given him a kind of reverence that felt almost protective. Polite distance, deep admiration. He rents a small apartment down a quiet lane, the kind with vending machines that glow like little lighthouses at night. He wears a mask and a hat and becomes one more anonymous figure in a city of millions. The days are simple: tea by the window, a notebook, a pencil stubbed down from use. He writes single lines of melody, then crosses them out. He hums a bass line and taps rhythm on the table with 2 fingers. No cameras, no crew, no one more take. Just air and sound and the basic heartbeat that made him who he was before the world claimed him. Freedom is strange at first. He can walk through Shibuya Crossing and no one recognizes him. He can sit in a tiny ramen shop and listen to the soft clatter of bowls and the steam hissing and know the scene will never be photographed. But freedom has an echo, and sometimes it sounds like loneliness. Late at night, a song drifts from someone's phone, human nature, tinny through a cheap speaker, and he feels something twist in his chest. He is both everywhere and nowhere at once. He starts to set a routine: mornings for writing, afternoons for walking, nights for listening. He doesn't chase crowds, he studies them. He watches how people move to rhythm without noticing, how a foot keeps time on a train platform, how a child hops in sync with the street performer's drum. He pulls that into his notebook, beats built from everyday life. Slowly, a map begins to form, not of streets, but of places he once knew, stages that once trembled beneath his shoes. News still finds him. The canceled London run, the ticket holders searching for refunds, the stories about what might have been. He lets it all float past like neon reflections in a rain puddle. He isn't ready to speak, and maybe he never will be, but the music doesn't ask for permission. It just knocks. Weeks become months. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. His feet, on their own, sketch the ghost of a glide across the apartment floor. A hand flicks on the offbeat. Shoulders catch a rhythm only he can hear. He stands in the half-light and tests the weight of silence, wondering if he can live inside it. Eventually, he travels. Quietly, carefully. A short flight to London, the city that once promised a second coronation. He walks the perimeter of the O2 at dusk, hood up, hands in pockets, and studies the curve of the roof like it's a stage waiting to exhale. He remembers the rehearsals, the timing, the beats they drilled again and again. The thought lands like a soft drum. The world never saw those nights, but maybe somewhere smaller, somewhere dimmer, he could let a little of that light through. He keeps moving. New York calls to him with a different kind of noise, horns and subways and the throb of a city that never learned to sleep. But he doesn't return like a comet. He slides in like a shadow. He finds a room above a club, the kind where the floorboards talk and the microphone smells like old songs. He waits, he listens. He tries to figure out what a life sounds like when you strip away the roar. And all the while, one question keeps tapping the back of his mind. Is he meant to be a ghost of his own legend? Or can he build something new? Something small? Something true? In this version of events, there are no press conferences, no giant screens, no countdown clock to a global comeback. There's just a man, a voice, a beat, and the possibility that music doesn't need a stadium to change a room. That's where we leave him for now, on the edge between silence and sound, holding both like a dancer balancing on the ball of one foot. The London shows never happened, but maybe, just maybe, another stage is waiting, somewhere nobody's looking. New York gives him what he needs, anonymity with a pulse. By day, he becomes that familiar urban silhouette, a hat, a mask, a worn jacket, and folds himself into the city's flow. By night, he lets the city teach him. He stands at the back of Harlem clubs where the saxophone melts into the clink of glassware and young drummers set tempos with their whole bodies. He's careful. He never stays long. He keeps notes on a folded paper in his pocket, a chord shape he hears by accident, a drum fill that could bridge two worlds, his past and whatever this is. He doesn't talk about a comeback. He doesn't even think the word. He thinks about truth, about the moment a room leans forward without being told. He remembers how it felt to command oceans of people with a fingertip. But here he's chasing something smaller. How to make a handful of strangers forget their own names for 3 minutes and 32 seconds. If he can still do that, then maybe there's a way forward. But the story isn't only American. Not for him. Tokyo's glow lingers in his bones, and London's promise still hums in the background. And there's one more city tugging at him, Istanbul. Years ago, the stadium by the Bosphorus had turned into a sea of light, and he'd felt the straight winds lift the edges of the night like a curtain. He returns now as a traveler, blending into the crowd at sunset. He stands on the Galata Bridge and listens to the fishermen swap stories. From somewhere down the hill, a cafe speaker leaks "Beat It" in a language of memories he didn't ask to hear. He smiles, sad, grateful, alive. On another evening, he climbs the steps to Galata Tower and watches the city breathe in every direction. Old stones, new glass, ships carving slow lines through the black water. He doesn't think about billboards or chart positions. He thinks about breath and space, and the miracle of a room going quiet in the instant before the first note. Across these cities, the same rhythm repeats: write, walk, listen. The notebook thickens with lyrics and stage sketches. Not stadium sketches, room sketches. A single spotlight. A mic stand set an inch to the left. Shoes polished enough to catch a line of light when he pivots. Movement scaled down so a table in the corner can feel the air change without needing a jumbotron to tell them why. That's when the idea finally lands with its full weight. Return to the stage, but not as Michael Jackson. No banners, no residencies, no press, just a small room. A pianist who knows when not to play, and an audience that arrived expecting nothing special. He will walk out, keep his hat low, and let the first syllable do the work. He rehearses the way only he can, in silence. In London, he sneaks into Wembley on a maintenance tour and drifts down the aisle alone. He stops at the lip of the stage and takes a breath as if the crowd were there. Then, just to feel the world tilt, he slides a moonwalk across a dusty piece of plywood no one will ever see. It's not nostalgia, it's calibration. Back in New York, he finds the room. It's barely a stage at all, more like a rug with a microphone. The owner keeps the lights low and the drinks honest. A place that values the song over the selfie. He books a night under a name that means nothing. Word spreads only as far as the bartender's phone, bouncing to a few regulars who like stories that happen in the dark. The day arrives with the calm of a storm right before it breaks. He drinks water, hums scales, flexes hands that remember more than he can say. In the hallway outside the club, the paint is cracked and the posters are peeling, and he loves it. He loves that nobody demands perfection from this space. It's a room for risk. Inside, conversations float like fog. A woman laughs. Someone taps a glass with a ring. A band on a tiny riser closes their tune to scattered applause. Then the host clears his throat and says a name nobody knows, and a figure steps into the single cone of light. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He stands the way only he stands, weight balanced like a held breath. The pianist lays down a chord that tastes like midnight, and the room quiets without being asked. He takes the mic, turns it just so, and drops the first line. It's not a hit. It's not even an old song. It's a thread pulled from Tokyo traffic and Bosphorus wind and the drum of subway wheels. But the timbre, that unmistakable color in the voice, slides through the room like a key into a lock. One man at the bar looks up, frowns, then smiles. A couple in the front row squeeze hands without knowing why. A waiter forgets to move. 3 minutes later, when the last note hangs and falls, the silence is loud. Then someone breaks and claps once, sharp, involuntary, and the room fractures into applause that feels like relief. He nods, tips the brim of his hat, and steps back into the shadow. No encore. Not tonight. Not yet. Out in the alley, he leans against the bricks and grins at nothing. His heart is racing, but not the way it used to when pyros popped and platforms lifted. This is quieter, deeper. A promise kept to himself. The music still works, even when no one knows your name. And somewhere between the pulse of New York and the memory of London, the path forward becomes clear. He won't chase the old crown. He'll build a new one, invisible to everyone, except the people who happen to be in the room when the light turns on, and a voice they thought they'd lost returns for exactly one song. After that first night, he doesn't post, announce, or confess. He just repeats the ritual in different cities, months apart, like a secret tour mapped by instinct. In Tokyo, a cellar room with 20 chairs and a piano that's slightly out of tune. In London, a bookshop after hours, where the mic feeds through an aging amp that smells like dust and stories. In Istanbul, a hidden courtyard, where the air is warm and the audience sits close enough to hear a breath between words. Each time, he leaves before the credits roll. Each time, rumors bloom online. Could it be? Short clips surface. Grainy, shaky, too dark to prove anything. The comments split into camps, believers and skeptics, romantics and realists. He doesn't read them. He doesn't need to. The question of a big return never really goes away. It hovers like a drone just outside the window. He could book a hall and crack the sky with one press conference. He could call in favors and reconstruct the machine. But every time he imagines the old scale, the trucks, the screens, the coordination, the music inside him steps back, as if to say, that's not who we are anymore. So he chooses something else. Between appearances, he puts time and money quietly into the places that always mattered to him. Hospitals with pediatric wings that need new equipment, community music programs that need instruments, schools that need a room where a kid can hear a piano for the first time. He doesn't attach a name. Good work doesn't need a spotlight to exist. One afternoon in Paris, near the Pont Neuf, a street musician is playing Heal the World. A small circle has formed. the kind of human tide that builds when an old song finds a new moment. A boy tugs at his sleeve and whispers, "Do you know this one?" He nods. They sing the chorus together, not loud, not showy, just enough to make the hair stand up on a stranger's arm. When the song ends, the boy beams, and the guitarist counts his coins, and the man in the hat melts back into the city the way a verse fades into a bridge. These are the scenes his new life is made of. Small rooms, small miracles, big echoes. He has not conquered the world again. He has touched it differently. Would London's 50 Nights have changed music history? Maybe. They might have bent charts and headlines and sent other artists scrambling to recalibrate. That version of the story is powerful and possible. But there's another kind of power in a narrative that refuses the stadium and still finds a way to move the ground under people's feet. In this timeline, the greatest comeback isn't a spectacle. It's a choice to let the art be big and the life be small. Of course, mysteries invite theories. Some will insist he's gone, that what people hear in dark rooms is wishful thinking wearing a hat. Others will swear they stood 20 feet away and felt the air change when a single syllable cut through the noise. The truth can survive both. It always has. So we end where we began with London. The 50 concerts never happened. The countdown stopped at 0, and the lights never rose on that version of history. But somewhere along the way, another stage appeared. Quieter, closer, carved out of fleeting nights in cities that knew him once and would never guess they knew him again. If you listen closely, you can hear it. Not a roar, but a hum. Not a finale, but a heartbeat. What do you think? If he had taken those London stages, would the world we live in sound different today? Or is there something even more powerful about a legend who slips the net and keeps singing anyway? Tell us what you believe. And if you want more parallel lives, stories that live between the facts and the possibilities, stick around. There's always another door to open.